Hi everyone, my name is Ierie, and this is Reminisce with This, where I take a little time out of my day to sit and reminisce with you on simpler times. From all the different hobbies, collections, and interests that I've obtained over the years. It's not just the physical form, though, that holds something dear for me. Rather, the memories I've gained along the way with the people that are in my life or were in my life. The places that I grew up, and just the overall experiences that I've gained with these particular moments. It's what keeps my collection alive. And what I'm going to be talking about today for Throwback Thursday, I'd be lying if it was actually Hercules, the Disney movie. But it is one of those that kind of correlates to what I'm talking about. Now, what I'm talking about today started with two TV shows that spinned off to an animated movie. One TV show starting that brought a hero through his journeys to a villain turned hero that started her own journeys in her own spin-off show. And quite frankly, I watched more of the spin-off show than I did the actual show that created this character and brought this character to life. You go through this story of this character and her journey with friends and the different aspects of what could have been in ancient Greece. But of course, this is fiction. But for the most part, like Disney's Hercules, or I should say, unlike Disney's Hercules, it does have a little bit more truth and fact when it comes to the Greek mythology and some of the characters as well in the TV shows. Of course, there's a lot of fabrication within both shows, but at least there's more of a underlining fact than more of the fiction like Disney portrays. Disney definitely portrayed this particular movie and the TV show to cater to children. So of course they couldn't have a lot of the different true facts of the Greek mythology, as I don't think it would have been as appropriate for children. But what we're actually going to get in today is going to be a movie that I really enjoyed as a kid. Now, I do own the specific show, the spin-off show, I should say, on digital. So I don't have it here as the physical form. But like I said, it's not always about the physical form. But what we're going to be getting into is the animated movie alongside with a little bit of a deep dive of how I got into these shows themselves and what they mean to me and how they've continued to mean something to me in my collections. So with that, we'll be talking about the animated movie of Hercules and Xena. If you have not seen it, it is actually a really fun movie from start to finish. You follow the characters just like you do in the shows and another adventure where they are now animated. This is what actually was helping bring a younger audience into the shows. Now, I would say that the shows weren't necessarily age appropriate for a lot of younger crowds, but it helped them broaden their horizons with this particular movie, as where most parents and younger, or I should say older teenagers and older adults were able to watch the shows. They were able to bring the younger audiences that their kids or siblings into the show without having to be showing them the inappropriate behaviors from the shows, but were rather able to show them this particular movie. It's a fun movie. It's very cheesy and corny, just like the shows themselves. The singing, it definitely has some bops in it, I won't lie. The storyline is great. You actually get to follow the story along with the heroes and just a little bit more true to the nature of how Greek mythology was. It showcased a specific goddess as quite the person that she was, or I should say the goddess that she was in Greek mythology. Vindictive, petty, and just downright one of those that wasn't as good-natured like the Disney movie. So with this particular show, I will go ahead and dive into that before we get into the movie itself. So how I got into this as a child, it was one of those shows that just was watched here and there. I watched it sometimes with my mom, my aunts, and just, it was a really great show for me. Now, like I said, I was more into Xena Warrior Princess than I was Hercules. But without Hercules, we wouldn't have had Xena Warrior Princess. Xena's character ended up being such a fan favorite that they did the spin-off show. And with that, you follow Xena and her trials and tribulations of going from villain to hero, and all of what it does to kind of mend all of those bridges that she burnt, and trying to really do good by those that she did wrong. You follow her story along with her friend and companion, Gabrielle. And when I mean companion, I mean like a sister. Someone that taught her time and time again of how to be good in nature. They do go through quite some trials themselves within their relationship dynamic, it not always being certain perfection. There are going to be moments that you do meet a lot of the other characters throughout the show, some that kind of follow along with the characters that, have their stints here and there. But for the most part, it is the dynamic of Xena and Gabrielle. Hercules does show up quite a bit with his companion as well. And right now, honestly, the name is kind of fallen for me. I can't remember his companion's name because that necessarily wasn't the character or the show that I really focused on. As I grew up, I really did enjoy and appreciate this show quite a lot. Like I said, I did buy this show particularly on digital, but that wasn't until much later in life. What I was able to do was watch the show Xena Warrior Princess on streaming service of sorts, or just finding it on the interweb and finding how to watch them. Now, during my junior year of high school, I was homeschooled. So with being homeschooled, I had a lot of free time. So while I was doing homework, I was watching Xena Warrior Princess. Now, I can say I probably watched Xena Warrior Princess every season and every episode during that year, probably 5 times, as I really did want to watch it from start to finish, and I didn't want to miss anything that I might have. But while I was actually watching those shows, I was looking into the different Greek mythology moments that it kind of showcased and talked about. Now, of course, like I said, a lot of it was fabricated, but the characters that they were basing them off of weren't. So I was able to dive into those characters and those moments and just really educate myself. I was able to have those conversations with my grandparents, sometimes my aunts, and just overall the stories that were brought into a new appreciation for the history of Greek mythology. As when I was a kid, I didn't really necessarily fully appreciate that while learning it in school, but I did enjoy certain aspects here and there. But because I was a little bit older, I was in high school, and I was enjoying just the different learning aspects of that, as like I said, I was homeschooled. So the more knowledge I was getting, the more I was enjoying things that necessarily most people wouldn't take for learning something from school as a TV show. But if it wasn't for the TV show, I wouldn't have done the deep dive in the actual Greek mythology and learned about all of the things that I did not learn or was present but just wasn't listening in school at the time that we did learn about them in middle school. But this is what brought me into a point of my collection. Because of strong, dominating women characters, it really had a semblance and a symbolism for me to correlate a lot of these amazing women characters into the women that were honestly raised me. I was primarily raised by all women growing up, from my great-grandma, my grandma, my mom, my aunts, and women that necessarily weren't blood related, but were definitely family to me. I hold my collection so dear by collecting primarily female dominating figures simply based off of those moments of my childhood, where I was able to look at the women in my life as strong characters from shows like Xena, Buffy, and Charmed. But not just those shows, but also a lot of movies and things like that that I saw in ways the women in my life in those shoes. And that's why I looked up to so many of them when I was a kid, the shows themselves and the people in my life. And that's why I continue to collect the figures that I do, because I get to, in a way, continue that legacy on for the women in my life. The women in my life definitely have played such a huge part into my collections today, mainly because of their strength and their will and the trials and tribulations that they went through and overcame time and time again and did their best to do what they could for us kids. If it wasn't for these strong women in my life, I don't necessarily think I would have such a tie-in to such a passion to collect these particular figures or want to learn about their stories. I really do enjoy and appreciate the women in my life at a deeper level of understanding today, as I can reflect while watching these shows now and really understand what my younger self was doing. My younger self really did see them as my heroes. And now as I watch them today, I get to still have that same connection to my younger self to now of how I view the people in my life, based off of, I don't want to say the fiction aspect, but rather the character dynamics and the stuff that they just showcase time and time again. That strong female characters are pertinent to my existence, because the people that were around me were an army of women really just doing the best that they can to raise a village of children. You know, it's something that I really have a love for even more today. And honestly, Xena Warrior Princess was pretty badass, just like the women in my life. So of course, while I watched those shows and I spent that time during my junior year of high school, I was able to have a lot of moments that I shared with my grandparents and my aunts, and really just am able to look back at those memories and moments with so much more of a fond appreciation for them to even kind of entertain the different memories, or even just the times that I was fascinated about the show. And of course, my grandparents would be like, okay, well, what happened on today's episode? Or the episodes that you did watch? And me talking about it and going on and on, just like I am in this moment, they never really made me feel less than or weird for having such an appreciation, and then diving into the history of the Greek mythology and talking about how it brought me into learning about that real moment of Greek mythology. Well, the history of Greek mythology. Can't really say it's real or that it's fake either, but those moments were something that I can appreciate deeper, as I didn't necessarily think too much of it as in that moment. So as we get into the animated movie, one of my favorites actually, I have watched it quite a bit, and I actually bought this VHS at the same video store that I bought Mewtwo Returns. It's one of those that I picked up. It's one that I had watched a lot growing up as a kid when it did come out. We rented it at a video store, and I probably played it more times than not before we had to return it. That's probably why we ended up returning it sometime sooner than not, but I did watch this quite a bit. You follow the storyline of course, Hercules and Xena and their companions in their journeys to fight a certain goddess and what she's trying to do by, controlling the universe. You follow the actual story of this particular show in a way of a continuation of the animated movie, in ways that they got to do a little bit more by doing the animated movie than they could necessarily probably in the actual show. You are seeing the Titans being freed from the underworld by no other than Hera herself. Hera wanted that control. Hera being the goddess that necessarily was more in the Greek mythology, a very petty and vindictive goddess to some aspects. Now, I could understand her placement with, honestly, her husband being Zeus and all of the different trials and tribulations he put her through by just being the scuzzbucket that he was. So, of course, you follow this journey along, both the heroes and trying to figure out how they can save the universe and defeat the Titans from obtaining what they are trying to obtain. And that is Olympus. They're trying to control Olympus, they're trying to destroy Olympus, and kind of wreak havoc on the world, which, if all the gods at the time are focusing their time at defeating the Titans, then Hera is able to really focus her motive on ruling the universe at hand. So that's where you go throughout this journey of this movie. It is really fun from start to finish. I really did enjoy it as a kid and now as an adult, where there are some definitely cringy moments for sure, just like when I rewatched Xena Warrior Princess. It definitely hasn't held up to the test of time, but it has held up to the test of my memories. It is one of those fun moments just from the crazy songs that they sing, from the Titans song. That tends to be my favorite, honestly, from the movie, is the Titans just wreaking havoc and singing their song. You get to have a little bit more of a fun range of things that you kind of remember from the TV show. Some of the moments from the TV shows from Xena Warrior Princess were actually musical episodes. So for me, it was really fun from start to finish, like I've stated. It is one of those that I really can't wait to show my younger generations in my family, like my nieces, and if I ever choose to have kids, because it's just something that I would love to share with those in my life. Just like I can hope that the same symbolisms of the strong dominating characters can have some kind of resemblance to the people that they look up to and hold dear in their lives. Because without these particular people in my lives, I don't think I would have had such an appreciation for all of the wonderful characters that I have collected and obtained and learned about over the years. Because I see a lot of the women in my life in the shoes of the characters that I love and appreciate today. Xena being one of that, and like I stated, there are so many other characters that I could focus on and really look into seeing my loved ones as part of those characters and the love that I hold dear today. I probably have sounded a little redundant going round and round here, but I really want to preface that these particular people are why I continue to collect, why I continue to hold on to so many amazing memories and characters, why I particularly collect female characters, as I feel like it keeps their legacy alive. Not every one of those women in my life are still around today, where I still have quite a few that are in my life, but my great-grandma and my grandmother have since passed. So by keeping this hobby alive and the collections that I do, I tend to kind of reminisce on those memories and moments with them, keeping their placement in my life alive and all of the things that they did to teach me and keep me into a place of appreciation of not just them, but women in general. You know, I really do see a lot of the women in my life as some of the strongest people today. And honestly, if it wasn't for them raising a village, I honestly don't know where I would be. I've gone through my own trials and tribulations, most definitely. But these women stood by me when they had no need to. I, was chaos in nature for a long period of time. But they always showed me time and time again the love and compassion that the characters that I looked up to showed in the shows. So very much so, these females in my life, these women in my life, really were and are the heroes that tie into the heroes that I love today in entertainment. And so with that being said, that is how and why I continue the hobbies and collections that I have today. I know I didn't go into full depth of the animated movie, but that's okay. It's necessarily of what the movie and the shows and how it correlates to my collections today that really bring that importance. So as we end Throwback Thursday, I say thank you for sitting with me and reminiscing. I probably went around in circles a couple times, said a few things redundantly, but I really want to make sure that my message is loud and clear. Thank you to the women in my life for being there for me, for being the heroes that I needed, and for really being able to keep this hobby alive. I love you and I appreciate you so much, because without you, I really don't think I would be where I'm at today. And so with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you to them, but also thank you for listening today. I really do appreciate every moment I get to share here. So with that being said, I want to end this like I normally do. If you have not been told you are loved, cherished, and or cared about today, just know that I love you, I cherish you, and I care about you. And until tomorrow, I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will catch you on the next one. All right. Peace.